80% of the world's working population, which is 2.8 billion people, work in the front line. We believe that if you have a connection and if you have access to tools that you and I have, frontline workers can not just improve their work experience and their productivity, but definitely also their opportunities in life.
How do you manage to structure that feedback loop in order to improve your product?
I was asked by the board of investors to step up as CEO. And the reason why is because the transformation of the product, I'd done an analysis on that when starting at Wyzetalk, was not just the transformation of the product. It was an organizational transformation that was needed. We make decisions based on what is good for everyone and not just a very small subset of people.
Today we're here with another episode of Grow with the Flow. And today we're being joined by Merel. She's currently the CEO and CPO of Wyzetalk. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Cool. Super excited. Wyzetalk is a platform that bridges the gap between HQ and frontline employees, if I say that correctly. Merel has a lot of experience in product, now the challenge of being a CEO. And we'd love to dive in a little bit more into your origin story. So that's where we always start. So talk a little bit more about where you came from. You can go back as far as you like, but just who's Merel?
All right. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. So where does Merel come from? Well, I come from way up north in the Netherlands. For those of you who are from the Netherlands, from Leeuwarden, very well renowned for the Elfstedentocht. Lovely little city. And I moved to Groningen for my studies when I was about 18 or 19. And I studied English literature with a major focus on Old English, Middle English, and Shakespeare. So entirely unrelevant to anything or irrelevant to anything that I'm doing right now, apart from the fact that I speak in English a lot. But it's very interesting. So I chose that study because English came slightly more natural to me than anything else. I referenced this comment specifically. I had to do a maths exam. My son is going through exams right now, so it's a thing. And I remember my maths teacher telling me, well, this is going to need a God's miracle, but good luck on your exam. And that is something that kept with me throughout my life. So you kind of feel pushed into a specific box by how people perceive you, what you've done. And I was good at English, so I decided let's do something that I'm good at and both enjoy, start there and then see what we will do in life. And that bet came out really nicely, I must say. So I think that it has really helped me solidify that you should not be put in a box by anyone because you can always go outside. And I think that my career is a major example of that. So I did English, then I moved in between communications, international relations, moved back to English because I found all the rest too theoretical and not creative enough. Then did a master's degree in Euroculture, moved to Poland for it, which was enormously interesting to live there for almost a year, experience both the culture but also the academic environment, which is vastly different to that in the Netherlands. It was really a great experience. Came back to the Netherlands and started working at the ICTY, so the International Criminal Tribunal for Former Yugoslavia, simply coordinating some projects, very low-level entry job, which was in The Hague, and I was living in Amsterdam at the time, so a very early train ride, just to make sure that I would get on a train. All the trains failed at the time, so it was, I think, 6:20 that I would take the train every morning. And after a year of that, I decided it might be time to look for a job closer to home. Also because the longevity at the ICTY wasn't known. So you would always get 3 months contracts because they never know when does a criminal case get dropped or when do we find a new person to put charges against, etc. And then I started to have conversations, was not invited, by the way, for the majority of things that I wrote letters for. I wrote letters for communications roles, project management, because I'd done done up some experience in that at ICTY, but did not get invited. Often very generic letters back. So I was getting slightly worried about, but what in life can I then do? Should I become a teacher with my background? And I got invited to a conversation at a factory, which has been my long-term employer. Very happily
long.
So. Yes,
especially in startup, scale-up land.
15 years. And I think I was employee number 40 or something. Had a conversation with the HR. And this was my first example of thinking outside of the box and what it can do to people. So we had a conversation for a role as project manager. And she said, after the conversation, it was a great conversation. I think you'll ace the job. Because you're very structured. I also think that we'll lose you within the next 6 months because it would be too boring for you. But we are opening up a new role, which is very new, concept development. And I think that might be something for you to dive into, which I have a look. So I started at a factory as a concept developer. And the main thing I did there was create standardizations. So what is a good product in that sense, a concept of a survey? And how do you make sure that from A to Z, that entire concept follows a certain process to be rolled out very efficiently with maximum impact? So I had to do a lot of research. It was not a digital product at that time. It's a long time ago. Tell you something about my age. Almost 20 years now. No, 20 years. So 80% of everything we did was paper-based. So massive boxes sent throughout the world with surveys that had to be dispersed among employees. And that slowly transformed into a digital product with digital results and outcomes of surveys, analysis, how to then have conversations with employees and give them back the feedback that they've given you. Super interesting and a massive springing board for me to both develop myself, but also keep on developing something that is very new and hardly existing at that time. So it was proper creation from concept to digital product. And after 15 years, where the majority of the last 3 years were spent on going from a service offering to self-service offering, I decided to jump ship. Time for a new challenge. I'd spoken to several people in the Netherlands and was invited to chat to Wyzetalk, the company I currently work for. And the very interesting thing there is that there was one audience that we had trouble reaching at a factory, and that was the frontline worker, because they don't have email addresses. So how do you send out a survey to get feedback and involve people and improve their work environment if you can't reach them? It was a massive problem, and we had to solve that through paper QR codes, everything. And now I got to meet this company, Wyzetalk, in South Africa, who created only one product, and that was a connection to frontline workers. So it was reaching the unreachable for me, very enticing, and it made me move over. And I got there with a similar assignment, going from very service-oriented product to not entirely self-service, but technology-based with services as an expertise, not as the main foundation. And here we are.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. Really nice. Wyzetalk.
Yes.
Tell a little bit more about it. More about what does it do? How does it work? A little more in depth.
All right. So what we do at Wyzetalk is we build a connection between a company, so an employer, and their frontline employees.
How does that work?
Well, with an app and technology, obviously. But it's let's start at the beginning, because it's very purpose-driven. And I don't think that many people know. We have 80% of the world's working population, which is 2.8 billion people, work in the front line. And it's something that before I joined this company, I did not really have a perception of. I didn't really understand, because I was in this bubble that the majority of people like us are in, right? We can do anything online. We have a laptop, we have a device covered for you by the employer in most cases. If you want to use a specific type of technology to do something, you can choose from 5 different apps or things on your phone or your laptop. And the frontline doesn't have that. So it feels a bit debilitating, but that's why we are working so hard to bridge that gap, because we believe that if you have a connection and if you have access to tools that you and I have, frontline workers can not just improve their work experience and their productivity, but definitely also their opportunities in life. So we build an app which is white labeled for any company, and we set it up to their specifications and needs. And our product centers around 4 very important pillars. The first is communicating in a crisis. Unfortunate, but very needed. Have been many crises across the globe in the last, couple of years, from natural disasters to accidents, explosions, strikes, anything that can disrupt working life or people getting to work or the workplace, etc. So we enable reaching out to your people 24/7 within a couple of minutes. If you can imagine that specifically in African context, but even in Europe, that normally you would have to have one person call 10 other people, and then that person has to call 10 other people, and you're never assured of getting a hold of someone, even if you have their phone numbers. So we build an app. They can access it through identifiers. They do not need to have an email address. Quite a large number of our users are illiterate or low literate. So an email address wouldn't make any sense. And with that, those identifiers, they register and then they get access to company news. So it could be a news feed. Imagine an Instagram page where a company can just publish whatever is relevant at that time for them. And it works both ways. So what is of interest to my people, but also what is information that I need to bring across. So we start with crisis messaging as one major and I think critical feature in that app. The second one is safety and compliance, which is majorly important in frontline industries. They always call them the dirty industries for some reason. People in mines, manufacturing companies, shipping, security, anyone who is not stationary and out in the field, working in less than ideal circumstances in most cases. So safety and compliance is a big thing. A lot of companies are being held responsible, much more responsible and accountable than they were in the past. But that also means that you have the responsibility to train your people on the right safety procedures, to make sure that training is continuous and not just a one-time a year thing, which is very costly because you have to bring people together. So having a technology to help you connect with your people can also help you reach your people with bite-sized information in a very quick way. And it's compliant in the sense that an employer can track who has seen what, and not for monitoring purposes, but for compliancy purposes. It's very important. So they can track who has seen what, who has said, I confirm that I've read the new policy and that I will adhere to these new rules. So it takes away a level of liability and reduces the risk of any accident. It's very important. The other thing that we do is we digitize processes, and we unlock access to major investments any company in the world has already made, particularly for their desk workers. So you have access, for instance, to your payslip online. You have access to, if you work in a shift, to your roster. You have access to leave, and you can apply for leave online. Frontline workers can't. But a company has already invested in that technology. So we open up that access. We don't build it ourselves. That would be foolish because there's so many great companies out there who do it. But we unlock that access for the frontline worker through an API. So that saves a lot of paper, a lot of time, and in the end, a lot of money, which is very beneficial to the majority of companies. One of the more important aspects that is often overlooked is that it also means to create inclusion. People feel very much included and a part of your company if you give them the same means and the same access as a desk worker would have. And then there's the element of engagement and upliftment. I think that it's very well known that everyone likes to feel seen and appreciated and valued and understanding of what they contribute to the business, being a part of a community. And that is also something that you can do with a platform like ours and a solution like ours. You enable people to give feedback. You enable them to see stuff that happens within their team or their location in a bit of an Instagram mode. So it's very cohesive in that sense and inclusive.
Right.
Nice. I really love it. It's there's not a lot of companies out there where the purpose actually is also something that companies want. If you know what I'm saying, like a lot of the times people want more engagement, but it's sometimes hard for companies, and it shouldn't, but it is hard to always connect take care of your employee, focus on the engagement, connect that to a business goal.
Yeah.
But this is actually something that can help save companies money and can help actually.
Sometimes lives.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. But,
Yes.
but you know what I mean? It's like there's this, it really solves a problem.
I know it does, but it's very difficult, and we're not the only company who will be struggling with this, right? So engagement and taking care of your people is something that, at least in theory, a lot of companies aspire to and say that they adhere to and want to achieve. But when push comes to shove and you need to make a decision on where you're going to send money, this is not the time to send money there. It's a luxury product in that sense. So what is need to have and critical, mission critical for many companies is, okay, how do we save money? How do we make sure that my message gets to certain people because it's going to, prevent an accident or increase safety or something like that. That is mission critical. Yeah. And I can't fault any company for it. I mean, we all need to spend our money diligently. Yeah. So it's a good thing then that in our app, and they have a choice, right? You don't get everything. You can choose what you think is important or not and switch it on. And I think that is very helpful. Yeah. So the mission critical is the hook.
Of course. But it's nice that it's, more than just, I don't know,
Well, when times get better, and typically they do for companies, we're all in a certain cycle, then at least you know that you can that it's there and that you can switch it on at no additional cost. It's just there. You can use it if you want to.
Nice.
I have this question because your product seems to be extremely complex. You tackle multiple areas within indeed taking care of the the frontline workers. Sorry. So I'm just curious, how do you manage to structure that feedback loop in order to improve your product? Because I feel like sometimes founders have this big ambition, and I've been there as well, trying to build super complex product. But it's super hard to prioritize the feedback that has the biggest urgency at the moment. So you have all of these areas, like the 3 elements. What does the internal feedback look within the company?
So manifold. So of course we have conversations with our clients, but there's a difference between a client and the actual user.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have a buyer and we have a user, and we need to be very aware when we get feedback on labeling it to the right persona in that say, because it makes a huge difference in where you spend your time and your money for future innovation. And I have one rule that whatever feedback we get, we need to test it against how many people does this touch. Is it the many? Higher priority. Is it the few? Even if they're paying the bill? Slightly less so. So we get feedback through client conversations. Our customer success team obviously has QBRs. So every 3 months they check in with clients. Are we still helping you achieve your goals? What about the metrics? How can we create more value? What do you see as trends within your company, and how can we help you get there? So we get a lot of relevant information from that. Sometimes we try and bring clients together as well. It can be difficult. It was very difficult during COVID, actually. But it can be difficult. But it helps for clients to discuss with each other what problems they are facing for two reasons. The first, it's very it provides us with a lot of information, but at the same time, they correct each other, right? So where someone can say, this is the most important thing for us, and then someone else asks questions and comes with something else, then they suddenly say, oh, wait a minute, actually, that might be. So you get a very nice balance and understanding of what is a true priority versus what is more nice to have at this moment, but good for someone. The other element is that we actively ask for feedback in our app from our users. That means
how do you do that with a group that's illiterate?
No, so they're low literate to illiterate.
To illiterate. Okay.
And there are multiple ways to do it. So we have, of course, a rating system where they can give the stars, and they can then enter feedback either through a very short form with easy language, but that's the majority of our app in any case, easy language, translatable, so on-demand translation where you can switch it to your native tongue for a better understanding. What we don't have yet, but I'm itching to get on is to have that translated, so to voice messaging, so that they can hear it rather than see it. As it happens, we know that we can't reach everyone through a form like that because of the illiteracy, but for low literate it's not a problem. It's catered to that. We still get a very good response on those forms continuously. So I think that every month for a company of average 20,000 employees or users, we get about, I'd say 300 forms back with feedback.
Right.
And the number sounds small, but in terms of getting ratings or feedback from your users is very big. It's very good for us to read, specifically what they like about the app, because it helps us understand and also provides a lot of, I'd say, justification to our team. What I'm doing is the right thing. Reading more about how users experience the platform. For instance, someone who never got a payslip, who always had to wait for it to receive it by post, and then it would not show up. But if you need it, because you need to go to the bank and ask for a loan or show that you can actually rent a place because you have that money, it's very crucial for them to have that information. So to then suddenly get it at their fingertips is life-changing, which is pretty cool to hear back. So it feeds our team and builds their sense of confidence and appreciation for whatever we're doing. And then it generates new ideas. So we ask them, what do you think is relevant? What do you want to know more about? Or what do you want to do? And then we can't guarantee that it will get on there. They might request something of which the buyer, in this case employer, says, no, I'm not doing that. Either it's too costly or I don't want our people to have access to that yet. Let's build their maturity first. But in most cases, it is topical. So they want to know more about a specific area within their company, or they want access to vacancies, for instance. Very often requested. Can you imagine that you're at a pinboard, like a big pinboard in your cafeteria, and there are vacancies there, but everyone can see that you're looking at a vacancy. So first of all, you don't reach everyone because you're not sure about the traffic in that cafeteria. Then the privacy of it. So the fact that it's just online and people can on their phone go access, see what there is, and if they qualify, apply, is amazing. So it's. It's a very long answer to your question, but that's kind of how our feedback works. So we get feedback through clients, through users, and market research, to be honest.
As a follow-up, and I'm passing it to you, I'm so sorry. I'm just like super passionate on the topic of building these kind of products as well, like really lead with impact. So for me, it's like the question is all around when and how do you strategically position the efforts needed for you to gather all of these quantitative or qualitative data within your product? How do you determine, okay, is it after the aha moment? Is it before the aha moment? Is it after they want to churn? Like what's a framework that you have in mind or your thoughts on that topic?
I'm not sure whether I get your question. So define for me what you think the aha moment is.
Well, let's say the aha moment in your case might be, oh, I finally have access to X, Y, and Z.
For the user, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And only then you can actually gather information. Oh, was this an efficient way for you to get access towards the information that you wanted to? And I think a lot of founders also skip that process of gathering more data from their users. So I'm just wondering, how would you determine where to put those initial efforts to collect information within a product?
So that was a very good clarification, because it helps me give you the answer of how we apply it. So we can't apply feedback strategies as the one that you're explaining, simply because we do not own the users. The employer and the company does. So we are limited in what we can actively push out to the users to get feedback on. So we have generic feedback apps, and we'll twinkle or highlight them when we think it's relevant or important, but we can't do active pushes after a new release or after or just to gather. So sending out a full survey to everyone at the same time is a no-go in terms of GDPR and respecting the boundaries that the employer set. So unfortunately, we can't link it back to an aha moment. It's an always available feedback system, and we're very fortunate that we have so many users who feel the need to give us feedback.
Yeah.
And I think that is also very telling, right? So typically, and everyone knows this, you get feedback when people are either very happy or very unhappy. So it says something that we have a lot of very happy users, and we get excellent feedback from unhappy users who think we can do more with the system.
Nice. That's great. Cool. Yeah, no, I wanted to dive a little bit more into your story as well. Mm-hmm. So you've been in product, you had a great out of the box experience of moving through different roles in your working career. Now you've become CEO.
Yes.
I would love to learn a little bit more about the shift from product to CEO, because I can imagine a commercial element, a team element. And of course, you have these in certain degrees also in product, but now you're responsible. So how does that feel? What is the difference for you between the two? And
well, so the thing is, it was a bit of a surprise to become CEO. I was at Wyzetalk about 9 months, and I was asked by the board of investors to step up as CEO. And the reason why is because the transformation of the product, I'd done an analysis on that when starting at Wyzetalk, was not just the transformation of the product. It was an organizational transformation that was needed. Things had been done in a certain way for the longest time since inception, and the growth of Wyzetalk had been very organically and opportunistically. So very sales-led. Whatever you want, we can build. And that did mean that the platform needed, I use the analogy of an octopus with not just 8 legs, but or arms, but 21. And the exercise that I was pulling the organization through was identifying which are the ones that truly matter and create impact. Those are the ones that we'll build on, and the rest will slowly kill off and create ravioli out of that spaghetti ball, kind of. So that was the assignment. But if everything you do is so ingrained in the services that you deliver, in the way that you work, it meant that we couldn't just change the platform or the proposition of what we did and disentangle that. We really needed to look at the organization. And the board had asked me, can you widen this up to take along? Because we don't feel that the transformation of the product will be successful if we don't look at the wider organization. So it was, of course, an extreme honor, but very sudden. And I was immediately plagued with a couple of days of imposter syndrome, as you can imagine. But what? I've never been a CEO before. I don't know if I can do this. And I still have that sometimes, I must be honest. But the thing that I thrive on is solving a problem. So I took it one step at a time and I said, okay, but what do I know about this company? What are the problems? And do I think that I can solve them? And that's what I've been doing every day. So there are definite changes. I'm not sure whether I was a very typical product person in that sense, only looking at product, because the product is always one element in a wider ecosystem. And you can't...
You come from concept development,
yes,
right?
you can't develop in a silo, right? It needs to incorporate everything. And my education in that sense at a factory also meant that you are taken along as a very transparent organization. You're taken along in the business model, in the finances of the company. So my education was also wider or more generic in that respect. And I've taken everything that I've learned there on board in solving the problems now at Wyzetalk. And there are many challenges. The commercial aspect is an interesting one. I was slightly hesitant at first, but I'm really getting into it right now and loving it. And just being very pragmatic about every day and every challenge that comes my way. I think it's not a difference, it's the same.
It's still solving a problem.
Yes.
It's still solving. But I can imagine, especially the commercial aspect of it, there's a lot of things that are different and new, but also, of course, always the same. But especially if you're the CEO, the end responsible, there are certain decisions you sometimes need to make. I can imagine that sometimes it's difficult.
It is difficult. And specifically when it's people-related decisions, right?
They're always horrible.
Always horrible.
Yeah.
Always come with second-guessing guilt because you're making a choice that potentially impacts someone's short-term life or... So it's very difficult. And the one thing that I always keep in mind is I need to make a decision that benefits all 90 employees, not just one. So if it's good for one, but not the other 89, then it can't be a good decision. And the same goes with product. We make decisions based on what is good for everyone and not just a very small subset of people.
Yeah, I once saw the CEO of HubSpot speaking, and he said, my only goal is to keep the bus driving.
Yes.
So there's enough gas in the tank to keep it driving, and people come off and off the bus, and my job is that it keeps driving.
Yes.
That's always the thing that I remembered. It's like, it's not just one person, but it's the whole company you need to focus on. So
a double-decker in that sense.
Yeah, double-decker for HubSpot. But this was 7 years ago, so it's been a while. But something that stood by me. Before we start into the next section of this podcast, I'd like to dive a little bit more into a topic that you spoke about at the Sassiest, namely UX, and how UX is always an underspent part of the business, or the business don't really focus on it. And why is it so important, and how can it actually drive revenue? Because that's actually what you talk about at your talk. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously very passionate about the UX topic. It can be so frustrating to use a technology or a product which has bad UX. I think it can just accelerate about anything. But specifically revenue, yes. Happy users creates a lot more revenue in any sense. And what we've noticed is that a general spend for tech companies on product is about 20 to 30% of revenue. As a part of that, only 12% goes to UX and UI research. And mainly it goes to UI design and not so much proper research beforehand, which is understandable because that's how companies build quickly, right? You have an idea, you push it to the market, you chase your first set of clients, and then you start iterating. But even then, you find new clients and they have maybe a slightly different wish. So before you get to true product market fit, you very likely already have something that is becoming legacy. And then it's becoming more costly to spend both time and money on UX and doing a rehaul, which is very necessary in all ways. So how do you balance then making decisions between a UX project versus building something or fixing something? And I think that the majority of companies underestimate what proper UX research and just 6 weeks, for instance, spent properly researching what's already out there, what problem you are solving, how you can solve that in the leanest and most efficient way, balancing stakeholders against each other and finding out what you really need to build is going to save you so much time and mishaps. It will make prototype testing so much faster in any sense. So you will much quicker reach a status of impact in creating revenue than you would if you would miss out on UX research. UX research is also not, I don't like product. It's a new thing in the world, right? I mean, yes, it's been there for a while, but for very many companies,
it's still new.
It's still new, and what you can do with it. And so I'm always very happy to put a little bit of a spotlight on UX, the importance of it, but definitely also the power of it and what you can achieve with it if you utilize it properly.
Yeah, what I find very interesting, because especially nowadays with the emergence of so many tools and so many apps and software and all these kind of things that we use every day, I think also our standards get higher and our attention span gets less. So maybe 10 years ago, you could get away with a crappy product or the experience of a crappy product. Let me say, maybe a good product, but the experience not as good yet because we focus on just having a clunky tool, but it does what it does and we will make it better later.
Yeah.
I think you can't get away with that anymore.
Well, okay. So yes and no. I would assume exactly the same, but I think that we could label us then maybe as premium users.
Probably.
Or more digital savvy users. I don't know the last time you went to an HR conference, for instance, where they showcase vendors with products.
Oh, yeah.
If you do a round of that and you look at the UX, I'm sometimes looking at things and like, this looks like an online tax form of 10 years ago. Why is a company that should be big on tech showcasing this UI? Why? And it also has to do with the buyers, I think. So very often people look at the buyers of a product rather than the users of a product, the end users, specifically in business to business. So buyers are older generations. They have a specific task and a specific end goal in mind. They don't really mind the clunkiness of a certain experience because that's what they see in the majority of company softwares. So still a lot of ground to cover. I think that there will be leaps and bounds though in the next couple of years. It's a real trend for UX to pick up and make any experience as people always say delightful. I don't really like using that word because sometimes you just need to use a product, not want to use a product, but to make it frictionless and lean. And if you can accomplish that, then I think that you're golden as a company.
Nice.
True. Yeah. I just wanted to add to that one. Sometimes when you try to be the new entry to a specific landscape and you have all of these old-fashioned tools that are out there being 10 or 20 years on the market, whenever you enter with a brand new UX, sometimes that is seen as a fresh breather. So the willingness to pay is actually way higher because of how easy it is, how frictionless it is. Yeah.
It is easier in that sense to surprise people, right? In a very positive way and to make them eager to use it. One of the downsides to it, though, is that fresh companies, startups, often do not have the same scala in functionality that 20-year-old software has. Yeah. So where for a company who's been there for 10, 15, 20 years to do an overhaul of the UX seems like a major investment. And because churn typically is low, for companies like that because of the breadth of
and implementation costs and it's so integrated.
Then still, even though people can be very much enticed by something fresh looking and lean working, it doesn't always offer them exactly what they need. If you would, I want to make a bet though, that if a company like that would actually look at feature usage of the software that they're investing in, they will very quickly realize that it's only 5% of their people who are using maximum functionality and all the rest are using hardly 20%. So a choice to go to something leaner is very often a good one, right? You can save money, most likely, and get something new and fresh out there. But then for the 5% who is so used to something,
it also depends if they're actually competition. Like I'm thinking about LinkedIn, for example, which is a tool that everybody uses, and there's not really competition out there. Like especially for me as a marketeer, as somebody in growth, way of running ads is horrible. The UX around that whole part of the business is just bizarre. It's just so bad, but I don't have another option.
Yes.
To reach my audience. So I still use it. And I think that's why, like, they have money enough to make it look nice and actually properly, like, work properly.
Yeah.
But it's just not a priority.
No, it's not urgent enough.
No.
So there is not enough friction, potentially because there is no competition out there, to make this a priority. And in the Celsius conversation, I referenced a few commercial companies, also business to consumer, like ASOS or ASOS. I'm never really sure how to pronounce that one in English. It's a big company, right? With heavy use on their apps.
Yeah.
And it was a £1 million investment for them to do an overhaul of their UX, but it's paying off big time. And I think that some companies just need to kind of grow the balls to make a decision
grow a
like
pair.
that.
What are some other companies like that? Because I think it's rather rare to hear such success stories. Oh yeah, this company has been on the market for 10 plus years, then they do a massive UX change.
Microsoft, yes, definitely.
Okay.
There are multiple. Figma did one. Well, maybe not a massive. Well, they did a massive overhaul, but also mostly in how users collaborate.
Yeah.
I think there are many examples. I just think that for the more corporate companies that we see, it's not as common, and specifically business to business.
Yeah.
It's less relevant. Business to consumer, you'll see an immediate impact in revenue. Business to business is a longer approach to building revenue. So I can very much understand it. There are so many things that you have to do, and if you have software that has been there for a couple of years, there's new technology that you need to take into account. You need to put patches everywhere, redevelop something, etc. So a lot of focus and attention goes there. You referenced the bus. I just need to keep the bus running.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of software and development, you also need to make sure that the product keeps running. And then you want to innovate on top of that while it's running. And that means that you have to make sometimes difficult choices. In our case, what we did, at Wyzetalk at least, is build a separate team just for research and development. No promises of what was going to go in there, which is a heavy investment to do, but it offered them a year of, let's call it free time. It was not free time, but a year of time to properly research, to ideate on the many challenges that our software and our clients were facing, and to see how can we do that better in a way that uses less data, that uses less resources, that gets a person to their outcome or their achieving their task 10 times faster than they are now. And it's paying off, because everything that we've learned there, we can actually implement into our existing software. There's also a misconception always that you have to build something entirely new. You don't have to, but it will take time to build something innovative into existing software. If you can spare some time and money, and startups often can't, and scale-ups might, go that route, because it will pay off.
Especially if you keep adding to your skeleton, that is kind of like, I think at one point it breaks.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And I think that you referenced it early in the conversation, right? I mean, you build a specific kind of technology, and then within 2 years, something else has popped up, so it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Which government organizations using technology, you often see something like that. So if you also take too long to make decisions or to make an investment, and you'll make mistakes. But if you don't try, at least you'll become the next Kodak. So you'll kind of have to.
Yeah, totally agree. With time in mind, shall we go to the next section of this?
Yeah.
I keep struggling with this word today. Section. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So we have fixed Q&A questions, and you can try to describe it with a few words or sentences. So the first thing is, what is a controversial opinion that you have?
Oh, God.
We spoke about this a little bit.
No, now I forgot what I wanted to say. Oh, I think that some people should be banned from LinkedIn.
Why?
You don't need to give an example. But
no, I'll not give it. So I think that LinkedIn is very often misused by ego.
I love that one.
Okay. Yeah. Shall we go to the next one? Or
no, we're not. This is it's the short answer, but I like it.
Yeah. What is your biggest fuck up or lesson
that you would like to share? You don't have to, but like, what is the one that you think could be useful for the audience that's listening?
In a business or a personal sense?
Business.
Biggest fuck up. So stupid, but there's one that kind of springs to mind. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned in life is how to navigate people's emotions when you're talking performance. I wasn't really good at that when I started my leadership career. And it's very important to stay authentic and to listen to what the other person at the end of the table is telling you and taking that into account.
I love that one.
Very often when you give feedback, you are anxious about giving that feedback because you're already taking into account how someone might receive it. So my biggest lesson in life was to not go there, but just stay true and share what you're observing.
It's actually really funny. I did a leadership course, and this was with an actor at the other side, and they were amazing, crying and everything. And you need to handle yourself in those conversations. And one of the biggest things I learned, and that they were telling us was when somebody is in their emotion, they are not in their rationale.
Yes.
But you can't stay in your emotion too long. So you will at one point go back. So until that time, you just need to listen and stay still.
Yes.
Like not try to explain it or explain the why or just let them talk, let them rant, wait. And once they calm down, then start the conversation. It's very hard.
And I have one. So sorry, I know this needed to be the short section, but there's one other lesson that I've recently learned, so valuable also to my team who are sometimes still early stage managers who need to grow into that position. And we were talking about collusion. Have you ever heard of that?
Not
so it's typically what happens in interacting with people is that, for instance, I can ask you for something, but you won't respond. And I'll get frustrated because you won't respond. And then I'll go in with some kind of tone of voice or a specific route that antagonizes you even more. So that circle of collusion is what very typically happens in collaborations, working together,
relationships.
And how to be aware of the fact that you're responding in a certain way because of your own emotion, and you shouldn't. And that was a very valuable lesson.
I love that.
Great.
I love that. Who do you learn the most from?
Very situational. It depends on what I want to learn at that time. I think that I learn a lot from my investors, our investors, particularly the Dutch one. They are deal makers at their core. And I had to grow my more commercial side. So I've learned a lot from them in how they perceive opportunities, how to deal with that, how to negotiate also, a very important factor. But then I learn a lot from my colleagues in South Africa, where there is a different culture and a different work-life balance expectations in the country itself. How to deal with that and how they deal with that is very inspirational.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. It's hard to kind of cope with different cultural boundaries, especially.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well,
elements.
You have to get to know each other really well to understand why something happens in a certain way. Yeah.
Exactly. Especially with like me being Dutch, I also had to learn that my directness was sometimes good, but not always. And it is such people love it after a while, but in the beginning, it's something that they really struggle with.
I stopped apologizing for that. Now I just go in, you do know I'm Dutch, right?
Yeah.
Just to clarify. No, but in the inspiration part, I don't think that anyone can imagine. One of my employees, for instance, misses a finger. And it was because she happened to be in the vicinity of a shooting in a township in South Africa. So people are living in different circumstances. And I think it's very inspirational to see people pick up, grab opportunities and be the best they can.
Yeah. To move to the next one, what are your goals for 2025?
Well, we have a very specific goal, I think, that is shared with between every company, is to make more money. And all relative. Our aim is not to become the biggest company in the world, preferably not, but our aim is to reach the many more. And we've gone through transformation and bootstrapping at the moment, which is fantastic to do. We keep our own trousers up. But if we want to invest and reach the many more, we need to grow a bit more and make more money to allow us to do that. So it's our main goal. And the other one is to spend wisely. So I always do that.
I love that. Okay.
Cool. Then we go to kudos and facepalm. We always start with the guests so that we don't steal the kudos.
Right.
And
well, my kudos will have to go to Australia for the social media ban below 6. Is it 14 or 16?
16.
I think it is amazing. And I want that in the Netherlands as well. It's major impact on the youth. In terms of, getting more reclusive, not spending as much time being concentrated and focused in your friends or at school, at anything. So big kudos to Australia for, taking that leap and leading by example.
Awesome. And the facepalm?
Paper-based communications. No, honest to God, and it's not really product related. I get letters from the government, from the tax services. And I'm looking at, and I can only reply by paper as well. I'm like, but why? You don't know if you're reaching people. If this letter reaches me, you have no way of checking that. You have my phone number, you have my email address, you have everything. Send me a message.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's such a waste of money and time.
That's true.
Totally agree with that one. I'm dealing with it now, so yeah.
Watch out for the blue letters, but that's another thing.
Oh God, I just want them online, those blue letters. They just keep sending them to me.
But why?
Yeah. It's the same like, do you want your can you send us your bank account number because you get money back from your VAT? It's like, I've been paying you so long.
You're checking everything every year. Why? So why? Yeah. I don't get it. No.
Okay, is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay. Kudos go to a fellow head of growth marketing at Maasflow. So Mr. Eduardo Casadro, I think that was his name, his final name. But huge kudos to Eddie because he has been maintaining great relationships with a lot of other heads of marketing, and he's always so supportive. So whenever I close my company, whenever I join a brand new company, whenever I wanted to try something else, build a framework for experimentation whatsoever, he has always been there. So kudos to Eddie and the whole approach towards maintaining healthy relationships with other heads of growth, because one day you might do partnership with them. Other time you might do collaboration or a content piece. We're collaborating in 2025 as well on a content piece. So kudos to Eddie.
Nice. And your facepalm?
My facepalm, I would say maybe to Riverside for not being able to pick up whenever there is a problem with the recording. Because, we face it through different podcast recordings, and it's normal. Sometimes you don't have Wi-Fi or something else. So it's kind of a bummer that you need to restart and, kill the whole mood of the conversation. So, there you go.
Cool. Wow. Last but not least. Yes, my facepalm. I will start with facepalm and on a good note today. It's actually, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Yes Madam went viral on LinkedIn. They're a company that did a survey on under their employees. They're an Indian company about stress and why people were stressed and just trying to gauge their stress level. And as a viral, funny thing, their marketing team said that all the people, in order to get rid of all the stress in the company, they fired all the people that said in the survey that they were stressed.
Oh, I've seen this, yes.
However, it was fake, but it was trying to gain virality.
Yeah.
Like, I find it so stupid.
I know.
Especially from a culture perspective. What is people will not know that this is a joke. So people will find your company online and people will see that this is happening. And this is where you're associating yourself with. And especially for me as everything externally you're doing as a company should represent your values. And if they don't represent your values, you shouldn't talk about it. So,
I agree.
I was like, especially when it's around people, and especially in a time right now where everybody's stressed and pressure is getting more and more, like you focus on making this a joke, where in a lot of companies, it's not a joke, it's actually true. So it was really pissed off for that. My kudos, I always struggle because I need to do them every week and it's getting hard. Well, actually, I'm going to just do a plant here for ourselves, but I want to give you a kudos.
Thanks.
We are starting with a community with our company where people can follow courses and learn a lot of stuff. And we just opened a waiting list and we have already 20 people that signed up. Just
23.
23 in one day. So it's actually really fun to build the community again that we're building with the Growth Syndicate, because we were all pre-COVID, and after COVID, everything just fell apart in regards to communities, especially work communities. So I'm really happy to see that people are like, yes, let's do this. So yeah, a little bit of a plan there, but also I think it's really cool. Then I'm not going to go into the post a lot today because we actually spoke a lot about your post around UX and the importance of UX. I'm going to leave it. We're still going to post it on the video, but we're not going to talk deeper into it. Yeah. Then we end always with the rapid fire.
Yeah.
So Georgi, take it off.
All right. So would you rather be a CEO or head of product?
Or CPO.
Or CPO.
That's choosing between two babies.
You got to choose one.
No. Well, okay, so it's a title, and I don't care about the title. As long as I can problem solve, I can do either.
Okay.
That's my answer.
Right. One tip to improve the process of talking to your customers.
I'm sorry?
One tip to improve the process of talking to your customers.
The process, well, I think first thing is connect and give them a call. Do not be afraid to pick up their phone. Even as the CEO, connect and ask questions. Everyone is always happy to chat and hear from you. So that would be my first go-to. Build from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great one.
I love that because people stop talking to customers most of the time.
No, it's the first thing.
I agree. But a lot of people forget after they've built a product that they stop.
And so I don't know if you're noticing, but with the younger generations, people are afraid to call these days.
Yes.
So picking up the phone and just asking for a minute or ask a question.
Or asking for somebody's time in general.
Yes. I mean, just call and ask, how are you doing? What's the product doing for you today? Right? Can I help you? It's massive impact.
Yeah, that's true. Keep in mind that I'm from the younger generation. So, okay. One thing that each product manager should keep in mind.
Product manager. I would have to go with analyze whether you're building for the many versus the few.
I love that one. Yeah.
Great. Speaking at conferences or doing live webinars?
Mm-hmm. Speaking at conferences. That allows you the opportunity to actually interact afterwards with people when the most interesting conversations happen.
Good insight. Netherlands or South Africa?
Netherlands for life, and South Africa for everything after.
Okay. And lastly, a book that you would recommend to the audience.
Or like a piece of content that you've consumed.
All right. So I would recommend, and it's a very Dutch one, it's not work related at all, but I would recommend Ommetje met Tom. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
So follow him on LinkedIn, Ommetje met Tom. He is a Dutch guy who during COVID walked his daughters through Amsterdam and started explaining about the buildings and the history behind it, everything. And his daughters were digital savvy, so they put it on social media. He has many followers, but it's so interesting to learn more about the city that you're living in. Very unique insights and just a joy to listen. They have podcasts as well.
And in English too.
And in English, and a book. And I would very much recommend. And I think that any city should have a Tom.
Oh, that's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, first time that I'm hearing that. So
yeah, me too, as a Dutchie.
I'm definitely going to check it out.
Yeah. Cool. Then before we end this conversation, we always give our guests the opportunity to plant something or to say something or something that you look out for. Can we, regarding to what you do or your company, if there's anything you want to put on the map?
All right, so there is one thing that I want to put on the map, because we talked about the majority of the working population being frontline, but having less access. So the actual number is that only 1% of corporate technology investment goes to frontline. The other 99% goes to desk workers with laptops, desks, everything, and software. And that is one thing that I want to make people aware of, right? It can be such a minor investment in the grand scheme of things, but you will reach your many. So go take that opportunity as a company, because if you don't, you will lose out in the end.
Nice.
Perfect.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's a wrap. Thank you so much, Merel, for joining us.
Very welcome.
Thank you.